That's right, everybody. As always, thank you so much for tuning in and making this your podcast or your live stream of choice. I feel like I was just with you guys yesterday, simply because I was in quite a few different places on this channel. Got to do Jimmy Church and Fade to Black last night. So it was kind of a crazy ride. I wanted to bring this to you guys live. I had a little bit of time. I was going to do one of those behind the scenes shows, and I thought, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's just do the show. We'll do it live, throw it out there, and blast it on all the different social medias. So no matter where you're following me right now, whether it be Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, you should be seeing it. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I always worry on live stream shows that something isn't working right, but I'm sure that chat will blow up if something's wrong. So always the best way and most active way to listen to this and interact with others is on YouTube. So if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, by all means, you can still stream it there. But if you want the most active way to interact with this show, it is definitely YouTube. If you're not subscribed or don't know how to get there, it's very easy. Just go to www.theblackvault.com/live. That will go ahead and take you directly to the YouTube channel, and then you'll be able to subscribe and follow along. And again, you'll see that chat room is kind of the most active. So what I want to cover today is something that some of you thought was a tease, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, it wasn't a tease. Last week on, I think it was Thanksgiving or maybe Friday after Thanksgiving, I had tweeted out a update that AARO, or the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, essentially the newest Pentagon UFO office, was researching or has researched hundreds, quote unquote, hundreds of videos, photographs, and all of this came up in a FOIA case that I am currently underway on right now. Now, what kind of got twisted was people thought I was teasing something, and I tried to squash it in the tweet. No, I don't have those videos, and I'm going to stress that to you again. I don't have the videos. I don't have the photos. This is different than the story that I wrote and did a video on with the Navy. So I want to stress that part, that the story where the Navy denied all of the videos that they have on UAP, that is different than this. So this is something else. This came from the Office of the Secretary of Defense and Joint Chiefs of Staff. That is essentially the office that handles all DoD related requests when it comes to, again, more DoD. If it's not an Air Force specific or Navy specific, all of those have different FOIA offices. OSD will be the place to essentially file this to, and then either they will process it if it fits in their office or forward it out. In this video, what I'm going to do is update you guys on that case, and you'll also see some FOIA tips. A lot of you guys write in with questions on FOIA. Some of you may not be interested in on all of these details, but I like to give them to you because for those that are interested in FOIA, I want you to see how this all kind of plays out and how you can get information about things that are going on right now through these cases, even though the spokespeople aren't talking right now, even though there's no press releases going out, even though the AARO office is not tweeting on their account beyond their first day, you can still start to get information. You can still start to understand what's actually going on. Now, as you can guess, I've got some visuals to show you. That way you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, before we get going, I want to stress one other thing to you guys. I aimed to do this a little bit earlier because, again, some people thought I was teasing something, and even though I was saying I wasn't, it got a little bit out of control. But as yesterday had shown, I was setting up, but I didn't want to advertise it because I wanted to make sure it was going through, my interview with Dr. Travis Taylor. Well, I was going to record this video Monday, and when I started talking again to Dr. Taylor, who he and I exchanged messages probably over the course of 2 months setting up yesterday. We couldn't get anything to align and it wasn't working, and he was doing stuff, I was doing stuff. So every time he was available, I wasn't, and vice versa. So when that started, I was like, okay, I have to take advantage of this. Yesterday was obviously a live show. I had to get everything created for it, which pushed everything else. So I was going to then do it Tuesday night. What happens? My tire blows on the way home, and sat for hours at a tire repair shop. Why am I telling you guys this sob story? Well, there was no intention to tease anything or prolong what I'm about to go through. But again, wanted to give you a little bit of a background on, hey, wait a minute, that's not like John to tweet something out and say more details are coming soon, and then I kind of ghost you on it. Well, that's kind of why. So let's go ahead and start breaking this down and kind of figure out what it in the world that I'm talking about, because not in the tweet is actually more revelations that I haven't gone over yet. So even though I didn't intend for it to be a tease, what happened earlier this week with Daniel Sheehan, for those who are into Fade to Black, a lot of rumors went around on social media that AARO or the task force, the UAP study, isn't staffed, it's not doing anything. And so that kind of deflated the hopes of a lot of people out there. But if I'm understanding those clips that I've seen in the parts of the interview correctly, I believe that that is wrong. So let's dive into it and see why I believe that. And you know, thankfully there was a delay in my video, so now I can address those rumors. I want to take you to September 21st of this year. That's when I filed this original FOIA. This morphs. So I'm going to take you through that morphing process. But what I originally filed was this: all records pertaining to the All Domain Anomaly Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO. So I was looking for everything. This would include, but not be limited to, letters, memos, emails sent to/from related parties. I agree that the FOIA officer used their best discretion on whose emails to search. Mission statements, PowerPoint presentations, draft documents about the creation of this group, etc. Essentially, I'm going for everything. I'm going for the whole kit and caboodle. It's a dangerous thing to do in FOIA because of this. Their response on September 29th, 2022. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will hone in on this paragraph. A request that uses open-ended phrases such as, quote, any and all, or concerning or relating to, or including but not limited to, is not reasonably described, as it provides an unrestricted scope in which any but the most meticulous of searches could be ruled inadequate. Sorry, the wording is always funny. As a result, it precludes a knowledgeable individual from conducting a search with a reasonable amount of effort. Requests for records must enable an agency to determine precisely what records are being requested. In order to process such a request, we would need you to provide reasonable bounds on the types of records requested. This would include a topic and time frame. Your request as worded is burdensome and does not allow for a reasonable search of records within the specified office. We are unable to proceed further with your request without additional information requested. If we do not hear from you within 5 working days of the date of this letter, i.e. by October 6, 2022, we will assume you are no longer interested and administratively close your request. Now, this immediately confused me because I filed a very similar request not too long prior to this one, almost identically worded. For those taking notes, this was case 22F0224. And as I wrote back to the DOD, I said, this is nearly an identical worded request with the exception of the program name, effort name, group name, and that previous request was processed with records released. So how is that case any different from that? Meaning, if you did it before, why can't you do it again? Now, what was that case? That was the one where I requested exactly what I just read to you guys on my original FOIA, but remove AARO and put in AOI MSG. That was the only difference. Everything else was essentially copy and pasted. And I think it was an exact copy and paste. But regardless, it was just nearly identical. They processed that case. This was the article I wrote in September about it. They released some documents and withheld many others. So I broke that down. There's a video on this channel if you're not sure what I'm talking about, but I at least wanted to remind you guys what it was that I was telling the DOD, hey, you've done this before. You did it in the last couple of months on something very similar. So why can't you do it now? Here's their explanation. This came October 3rd. In regard to the narrowing of the scope of FOIA Request 22F1364, the All Domain Anomaly Research Office, or AARO, is currently a fully staffed office and not just one person. Your previous request was submitted when the office, UAPTF, consisted of one person and was not yet fully staffed. As currently worded, your request 22F1364 is essentially asking for every record the AARO office possesses. This is not reasonable in scope. We will need a particular subject matter or a more precise description of the records being sought in order to conduct a reasonable search. That bracketed UAPTF I had put in there, that's a little bit of an error, so ignore that because the original request was for AOI MSG. So joys of life, I can't fix that. So ignore that reference there, but that bracketed is me. That was not in the original letter. So what they are saying here, the most important part is that it is a fully staffed office. Now, for some of you who really are paying attention, that may not come as a surprise, but where this is now a revelation or is it's going to dispel a lot of the rumors out there that this particular office, again, if I'm understanding everything correctly, and this ties to Daniel Sheehan's interview Monday. And for those who don't know who Danny Sheehan is, he is been around the block for quite some time in this field, but on top of that represents Luis Elizondo. So it's very kind of interesting that this information is coming from Danny, that they're not doing anything, that they're not even staffed, that the one guy assigned didn't even have an office. From what I understand, if he was answering Jimmy's question correctly, he was speaking about AARO, I think. It's very possible that maybe he's either misspeaking or maybe I'm just mishearing it. But regardless, I'm not the only one, because on social media, all these rumors are flying that obviously this attorney who's connected to Luis Elizondo, who many believe is very well connected in the ins and outs of all of this, that really nothing is going on. Yet here we are saying in a legal case, the reason why they cannot accept the wording of mine was that that office is fully staffed, and that the information that I requested, which was essentially everything that AARO has produced, was too voluminous. AOI MSG, they were able to do it. This, they're not. So that really kind of now starts to set the scene there that this is an ongoing effort, but currently underway, not something that is just staggering, stagnant, not doing anything, not staffed or whatever. Quite the contrary. Are they lying about this? I highly doubt it. I honestly do, because you have to look for motives when it comes to lies like that. And although I would buy into the fact that maybe they would essentially make something up or exaggerate something in order to get out of a FOIA, I don't see this as being a way that they would do that. So I want to take you through the amendment that I submitted on 11/22. And essentially what this does is the original FOIA that I just went over with you guys, it issues an amendment and changes all of that to a more specified request in hopes that they will then take away the "it's too broad" label on it and process it. Here's how I worded it. All documents, PowerPoint presentations, memos, letters, etc. that state the objectives, outline, or initial goals set for AARO. You can omit the publicly released memo on this, but rather I'm seeking all documents internally used to talk about what AARO's missions are. So obviously I'm going for what are they being set forth to do. We obviously have that memo, but those are very limited in what they reveal. So I was going for the internal stuff. Number 2, all reports, status reports, update memos, etc. that update on the status/findings of AARO. That's obvious. Number 3, all photographs and videos currently being analyzed or have been analyzed by AARO up until the point of processing this request. I ask that you include not only the digital files of the photos/videos being utilized, responsive records should be somewhat minimal, but also all analysis reports, memos, emails, etc. that pertain to any conclusions after analysis. This is obviously a little bit, and you can tell right up front, this is a little bit probably more detailed, hopefully going to yield quite a bit of material. So number 1 and 2, I figured would be minimal. Number 3, I thought partly would be minimal, but I was taking a guess. I ain't going to lie, because AARO was still somewhat new. And the rumor was they were still getting their feet on the ground. So when I put in there, the record should be somewhat minimal, I wasn't completely making that up. That was based on what we were kind of hearing, that things were still kind of getting underway. There wasn't a whole lot going on. So I thought, hey, look, there's probably not thousands of responsive records. So I put that language in there in hopes that the FOIA officer would go, yeah, he's probably right. It's when we're this detailed, there's not going to be a whole lot. Well, I was wrong. The yellow parts here are the response back. So this was an official communication back from the DOD. These are quotes, so these are not paraphrasing or anything like that, but they responded to my amendments. Number 1, in regards to the PowerPoint presentation of the mission objectives, they said, we can provide mission objectives and initial goals for AARO as described above, but some documents may still be in draft or deliberative. Essentially what that last part means is that they are giving me essentially a setup of their out. They may exempt it under exemption B5, and I may not be able to get all of the material. I appreciate that when a FOIA officer is honest. So they're saying, yeah, we have material. So they said, we can do this, but part of it may be exempt for this. So that's honesty. I can completely respect that. I wish I could get everything, but, beggars can't be choosers. Number 2, in regards to the status reports, this part is fascinating. We have monthly and quarterly status updates that we can provide. That, to me, is a revelation. This shows that they are delivering reports on a monthly and quarterly basis already. This isn't we can look for it. This isn't anything. This is we have. This, to me, yet again, proved that this was underway and that there are developments. So going to those, again, rumors that are going on around town here, that they're not doing anything. Well, here it is in writing, unless they're making it up or they're wrong. But this quote says, we have monthly and quarterly status reports. That's a huge deal to me. Number 3, this is where it starts to fall apart. All the photographs and videos that were currently or previously analyzed. This is their response. This one would be a heavy lift and would most likely still be unreasonable. There are hundreds of files, photos, and videos being analyzed. Even after the search through all of the responsive records, they are currently all classified. None of them would be released, and the search would delay the processing of this overall FOIA by several months. Now, normally, I would argue this, because they're shooting down the release of anything, all the responsive records that are on there, and saying that it's all classified. Normally, I would fight that. The problem is, I know that they're likely correct. The reason I say that is I just went through the battle with the Navy and lost the appeal, where they are withholding all of their photos and videos that have the tag of UAP, or let me rephrase that, all videos. My photos case is still open, although I can probably assume that I may end up with a very similar result. But regardless, there is this clampdown on UAP visuals that they don't want to release. So when I read that, I thought, okay, I can fight it and delay this thing potentially for, they say months, but the likelihood would more likely be years, or omit it. So I would take number 3 out. So now I've revealed that there's hundreds there. But if I take it out of this request and just deal with items 1 and 2, they'll accept it and process it. And that's what I did. Now, some of you may think, oh, come on, John, you got to go for that. Don't worry. Number 3 is not dead. It's just omitted now from this particular case. That way I can get 1 and 2 processed, because when I asked them, hey, when are you guys going to do it by, if I omit number 3, they gave me an ETA of February of 2023. So just a couple months from now. Don't hold your breath, because ETAs are very much just that. They are ETAs. And we have no idea, essentially, if they're going to adhere to that. It could come in earlier. It could come in later. There could be all sorts of things that come around. But if you look at the information that came out of this, at the end of the day, I don't have that material, right? That's why I tweeted it last week. Like, don't get too excited. I'm not teasing that I have this yet. But when you look at what you can glean from these requests, it's fascinating. And that way, now with verifiable evidence, because again, all of this is officially in writing and all attached to the case. They all have case officer signatures, so on and so forth. So there's nothing backdoor here. There's nothing that I'm saying, well, look, an anonymous person told me that there's hundreds of things, but I just can't, prove. I can't tell you about it. I can't prove it. That it's not about that. This is all officially tied to the case. So when other rumors start online, we can now cite official DOD correspondence saying there's hundreds of videos, photos, and cases that are being analyzed and or that have been looked at that were responsive to that portion of my request. That is a fully staffed office versus what it was prior with AOI MSG with just one person. So now that they've showed huge expansion to that part of it, and the fact that they were able during that time frame to process a request because the information that was responsive was so small, now they can't do that simply because the office is much, much bigger. So when somebody comes along and says, nah, they're not doing anything, well, looks like either the DOD is crafting a completely fabricated narrative, or maybe those rumors just are unfounded. So I don't want it to come off that I'm picking on Daniel Sheehan at all, but rather this is how people, including myself, perceived what he was saying. And I'm here to tell you that this legal case is absolutely proving otherwise. What happens in the end, sure, is anybody's guess at this point. If stuff changes, I will absolutely bring it to you. But I wanted to at least give you that specific update. So there you have it. To the FOIA people out there, this is why I stress communicate, because you never know what you can get. You never know what kind of nuggets you can reveal through those types of communications, where some journalists may just stick with going to a spokesperson. Well, none of that would have come from a spokesperson because nobody wants to talk about AARO or UFOs or UAP anymore. So they've all kind of clammed up. Susan Goff doesn't really release that much anymore for those that are hounding her for information. ODNI is not talking at all about the UAP report being late. They've ghosted most people. Everybody's tapping on their sources that they know inside, trying to get information. Even they can't really release it. It seems like nobody knows what in the world is going on. But look, on the other end of the world is you go away from those spokespeople, you start fighting through FOIA, and you start looking for answers that way. Even though you don't have a smoking gun into what is really going on, you start to get glimpses. And now we've established in writing that number 3 item on my request. I want to go back to what I said is don't get too upset that I omitted it from my request simply because I haven't given up yet. I am going forward with a new case. I don't want to reveal too much. In fact, I don't even like to do this much, but I wanted to at least show you guys not only what I had tweeted last week, but just give you a little bit of positive news here as these rumors are flying. But I'm going to be filing a new case with a new scope in hopes that it's too broad label can be lifted. So you have to find the specifics on how you request certain things. And I'm sure some of you out there are going to have your own ideas. I'm sure some of you that are filing FOIAs, if you haven't already, and you just learned that there's monthly and quarterly status reports, I'm sure I'll see your name in the FOIA logs probably pretty soon. But those types of revelations are absolutely awesome. And something that I'm always apprehensive to bring you details on cases that aren't done yet, but I think it was big enough to bring that in. Really quick, because we are live, John Hanna, the super sticker, thank you so much for that. For those listening on Facebook or Twitter or even here on YouTube, if you don't know what that is, all of this is tied into what's called a super chat. And those can donate to this channel. 100% of anything that you guys send in go right into the website. I don't buy myself dinner or anything like that with what you send me, but rather that goes right into FOIA fees when they arise. Recently, I posted the bill for the NASA data dumps that I got. That totaled about $400. I don't know if I've brought this up yet, but just to give another example, I have refiled a case to NASA recently and have agreed to pay fees up to $500 on this one. It's a lot of money. It racks up pretty quick. I actually will venture to guess that it'll be higher this time. The NASA information, not to take a big detour here, but the NASA information that I had dropped through the course of like 6 releases, again, was about $400 to get. And I show the receipts and everything too, so you guys know where it's going. But the dates of those documents were up to about a year to a year and a half ago. And my reason for pointing that out is essentially now you have a whole new wave of information that's being talked about within NASA on UAP because of their study. And so I filed these new requests, one mainly with a lot of the same people that are probably going to be very connected to that study group. So they have their core members that they announced, but I will guarantee that a lot of the other people are going to be connected to that group as well. There's going to be a lot of communication. So I estimate it's probably going to be at least $500, if not much, much higher. So that's what all of that goes to. If you're interested in contributing that way, there's a Patreon page as well. Links are in most descriptions of the videos. Since this one is live, it's likely not there as I'm doing this live, but I'll put it on after. But that's on Patreon too. So again, 100% goes right into the site. Ken Brett, thank you so much. Listening in from Canada. Appreciate that support for the channel. I'm happy to take some questions. I have about 20 minutes or so. And Chris James, I'll pay your $600, John. Well, Chris, I don't know if you're serious or not, but I appreciate the comment nonetheless. So again, I appreciate that. If you are serious, I'm happy to show anybody receipts that wants to contribute and stuff like that, or do crowdfunding and stuff like that. There was a big purchase from the CIA many years ago, and that was thanks to everybody because the bill got pretty high. I forget what the final count was, but it was quite expensive, and that was all on mind control material, what they call behavioral modification. And there was a lot of documents that had never seen the light of day before, which came out during that. So it gets expensive, but as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that comes along with these document releases. FOIA gets a bad rap in some circles, but man, if you look at the last couple of decades, you look at the information that has come out, a lot of times FOIA is what a lot of people have to turn to get that information, and it's brought a lot of stuff to light. Sven, why is the vault blue? Great question, because if it was black, you wouldn't see me. So I can't do a black light back there. But what's cool is that light that I use, which is tied into my overhead here, and then I'm actually lit. I don't even use like one of those ring lights. I have multiple monitors up here. This is all just computer light. So my key would essentially be my computers, and then that has every color in the rainbow and then some. So I can do all sorts of effects back there. But for me, it just looks cool. I've, in my opinion anyway, I like the blue versus any of the other colors. Green looks a little too weird, but yeah, I can do anything, and it all is connected to my phone app. So it's blue. It's a Bluetooth light, and I can change it as we go. So, yeah, so that's why it's blue. A few more likes wouldn't hurt, guys. Martin Wright, thank you for that. Yes, a thumbs up always helps if you're on YouTube. I have no idea how it really works algorithm-wise if you're on Facebook or Twitter. But hey, give a heart anyway if you're on, I think it's a heart, on Twitter. Thumbs up on Facebook. It's always appreciated. So forgive me, I don't have moderators in the sense that they can flag questions for me. So I'm just going to kind of go through and find the questions. If you can help me out, Aaron, this is a great question. If you could type questions all in caps, I know that that's like a faux pas on the internet, but it's a huge help for me. Or just do question in all caps and then ask your question. That'll make it go through. There's about 350 people watching live. So on my screen, it combines all Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube comments in one window. So as you can probably imagine, it gets a little insane as it keeps going. Aaron Dunn, you have a great question. Can you briefly detail what kind of things were found in the CIA mind control materials? Best wishes, bro. So, Aaron, thanks for that question. So here's kind of the big revelation. It was in a what I call a viral story. I mean, I've been blessed in the sense that I've been profiled in some stories over the years that have truly gone viral, and why that's a good thing because you know when it goes viral, it goes around the world. Why it's a good thing is it gets attention for stories that have never really had the attention before. So it's less about, hey, the Black Vault's being profiled here worldwide. It's not about that, but rather the information. And in this particular story, which came from the CIA document dump, one of the documents that had come out was the reality that the CIA had sponsored programs and budgeted the implantation of chips into the brains of dogs. And the intent was to see if they could remote control a dog through a chip in the brain. And they were successful. And this particular report goes through how they, essentially how they did it, what the tests were. They had diagrams of how they made the dogs walk. So it was essentially, walk straight, turn right, turn left, doing all of these different patterns, all being controlled by a remote control with a chip in the brain. I want to stress again that it was successful. This was in the early to mid 1960s. And this information had never been out before. I looked far and wide to kind of see like, oh my gosh, this is pretty big, but this has to have been revealed before because the CIA told me that. They said, well, all this material has been out for many, many years. That, in my opinion, was a lie. So I had spent all this money for these documents, or I had spent about 2 years fighting for the documents. And they kept trying to charge me. And they're like, well, look, all of this stuff is in the public domain. So you're going to have to pay for it. And I told him, I said, no, this has never been released before. You should have released it in the past. And it literally took about 2 years of going back and forth with the CIA. And the end result was they essentially said it was not mind control. It was something they considered behavioral modification. And that was their legal way of charging me. But their documents, again, had never been out before. They claim they came out with the MK Ultra stuff that I got, 15, 20 years ago, but it never did. And so there's kind of a much longer story to it. But another researcher, not myself, actually went through and meticulously went through all these document numbers and realized a bunch were missing. And that was what started the 2-year journey of me fighting for these records by me showing the CIA, hey, you never released these to me, though you said you did. They made like a finding aid, with all the document numbers. And I never went through one by one because it was insane. It was like 30,000 pages. And someone actually did and took a long time to do it, contacted me and said, hey, all these documents were missing. So that was what the data dump was. One of those documents was the implantation of chips into the brains of dogs. And again, proving that those documents had never been out before. So that's kind of a nutshell of how that came about. There was a lot of other fascinating material in there, including MK Ultra material. That same topic that the CIA said, well, we released everything, and all of the documents that you're fighting for have nothing to do with MK Ultra. MK Ultra stuff was in the package too. So it was frustrating, but very kind of telling on how the CIA tries to get in and out of, answering questions. I think they didn't think I would pay is where I ultimately wanted to go with that story. And crowdfunding got me all that money, and they were forced to release. Larry, thank you for that support. Hello, Black Vault. First time catching a stream. I'm curious about your opinion on the pi effect patent. A drop of truth hidden in ocean of lies, perhaps. Interesting story nonetheless. Much love. That's also a great story and question, Larry. I will be fully honest and say I do not have the educational background to comment on the patents that he has created. I know that obviously they're heavily talked about. My friend Brett Tingley has a journalist who has written about that quite a bit. He would definitely be more of the pro to address a question like that. You might want to look up his work and articles about that. And I think that'll be a little bit more illuminating than what I can give to you. But for me, the critiquing the patent aside, I mean, it's fascinating stuff. It really is. I just wouldn't be able to kind of critique either way with that. That kind of stuff is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. And I try not to, sit here and pretend I know what I'm talking about either way when it comes to that highly advanced technology. But fascinating nonetheless. Obviously, the patents are really cool to look at. So I would recommend anybody look that up and Brett's work. And he has definitely dug in. I also believe that Kurt Jaimungal of Theories of Everything, that podcast, he has interviewed Salvador, I say Pai, but I think that's wrong pronunciation wise, but he actually interviewed him on his podcast, so I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. All right, BJ, I assume you have, but have you done an actual FOIA of Bob Lazar? Sorry to bring him up, but he submitted the tax firm in court, so it was not fake. He'd be in jail. Okay, so this is probably tying into my interview last night with Jimmy Church. We got onto Bob Lazar. I always love being on Jimmy's show because I never know what kind of questions he's going to throw at me. And obviously, Bob Lazar and that topic is something that is much bigger than a question or two being thrown at somebody in a podcast. But it's no secret that I'm not a believer in Bob's story. To the first part of your question, BJ, about doing an actual FOIA on Bob Lazar, when you talk about doing a FOIA on someone, if they're still alive, you're skirting an edge here of what is called the Privacy Act, wherein I can't really get information on Bob through FOIA or the Privacy Act without Bob's permission. Now then the question is, let's say Bob wanted to play ball and say, yeah, I definitely go for information. I give you my permission and I get all the legal documents signed. What would I go after? And the question mark here is likely there would be nothing to be found. And I think that I can already see it. The excuse would be, well, it's just this massive cover up because they erased his, whole work history and tried to cover all that up. And all of those are well and good claims, but it's going to be impossible to prove. I can tell you that documents came out on the raid that was in the Bob Lazar documentary done by Jeremy Corbell. That was received under a state sunshine law, very similar to the federal FOIA law, but through the Sunshine Acts in the states. And it proved that the raid on Bob Lazar was actually tied into a murder investigation. It had nothing to do with the FBI looking for element 115 or, whatever that particular rumor was. So that's kind of the closest way, BJ, that I can answer your question. If when you file a FOIA on a person, that's the closest I think I can come, wherein it was just that raid. There's really kind of nothing else. I did receive documents on United Nuclear. That is Bob's company. That's more of the trouble that he got into with the law. So you can find those on the Black Vault as well. And I believe I still have some cases open on that as well. So we'll see what else comes out, but I highly doubt it's going to be anything connected to, Area 51 stuff, but rather the legal trouble that United Nuclear kind of got in the past with some of the stuff that they've sold. The last part of your question, the tax form, I believe you're probably talking about the W-9 and the Department of Naval Intelligence, which doesn't exist. And again, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, one of the documents that Bob Lazar put out there years ago was a W-9 showing that he was being paid by the U.S. government as proof that his story was true and that he wasn't making it up. That document was a W-9. We all know them as at the end of the year, we get those W-9s that we got to turn into the friends over at the IRS and pay an insane amount of money that well, I won't get into that tangent, but anyway, the W-9 goes over there, and he was showing everybody this, and that his employer was the Department of Naval Intelligence. Well, a lot of people have made this mistake over the years. It's an easy mistake to make, because when you hear Department of Naval Intelligence, you go, yeah, it's a real department, and it's actually not. The real name is the Office of Naval Intelligence, and it's an office under the Department of the Navy. The Department of Naval Intelligence has never existed. There is never any proof of that whatsoever. There have been people that have tried to revive the debate about the Department of Naval Intelligence recently online. And although I can appreciate the effort, I believe that there's a lot of misunderstanding with what's going on there. And I don't think that researcher was too happy with me chiming in saying, hey, you may want to check with the National Archives and just give him a call. It's a real easy thing to do, because he found a reference to a Department of Naval Intelligence in a finding aid. But I've been around National Archives, not only the national one in D.C., but also quite a few presidential libraries, which are all run by NARA, and the College Park one. So I've been to quite a few of them. And although their finding aids are very useful, a lot of times they're inaccurate. And that very common mistake of saying Department of Naval Intelligence versus Office of Naval Intelligence would absolutely happen with, let's say, an intern that's just there doing a summer internship making finding aids. And that's how a lot of those finding aids were created over the years, were interns and essentially college students going in. So they're doing these really fast, and that's what he was basing his revelation on. And I said, well, I think you may want to just double check and see if that's accurate, and it's very easy to prove. But he didn't like that. So that's the W-9. So giving that information to those who aren't aware of what we're talking about, Bob submitted that in court. I'm off the top of my head, BJ, I'm going to just take your word for it. I'm sure he did. I don't think you're making that up or anything, but it's also quite possible that that's a rumor. There's so many different rumors that have gone on with the Bob Lazar story that I'm not harping on you for saying it. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things involved in the story that aren't necessarily true. But even if he did submit it to the court, it may not really mean much that he's not in jail because he submitted a fake document. I'm happy to try and look into it. If you feel that it was really officially submitted to the courts, let me know. I don't, just again, off the top of my head, don't recall seeing like official proof of that. I think I have heard the story, but there's all sorts of stories that are inaccurate when it comes to these types of issues, including Bob Lazar. So feel free to email me on the side. I'm happy to address it. But even if he did submit it, and that's all true, I don't think it really means much that the judge didn't sit there and analyze a W-2 and, not throw him in jail. This is an interesting one. Bob, was Travis hinting Lazar could have been part of mind control? I'll be honest with you, Bob. I didn't get that impression at all. I'll go back and listen, but that was not something that I took away from the interview at all. I'm sorry to say. Captain Scamp, do the party changes in Congress have any effect on FOIA releases? In my opinion, no. It doesn't matter who sits in the Oval Office. It does not matter who runs the country through either the Senate or the House or both. To be honest with you, it just really doesn't have any bearing on FOIA releases. A lot of times FOIA releases outlive a presidential administration. In fact, I have, let's see, 4812. I have one request. My record almost hit the length of time of 4 presidential administrations. That was a 14.5-year record for a FOIA request. I've had others at 12, 11, 10 years. I think my oldest one right now is 10 or 11. So my whole point with it is it really doesn't matter when it comes to FOIA releases. Are parties wanting to be the more transparent party? Absolutely. Both sides of the aisle want that aura that they care more about transparency than the other. Presidents of both sides of the aisle will issue memos when they get into office that they want all agencies to adhere to the FOIA and re-fulfill their promises and oaths to transparency. To me, it's all smoke and mirrors and games and politics. There's really nothing, in my opinion, that's ever come out of that. Both sides of the aisle are the same when it comes to transparency. They're just horrible at it. Plain and simple, full stop. So sadly, it doesn't matter who's elected in my book. Brian says Sheehan was referring to the UAP task force, not AARO. And I'm definitely open to that. But Brian, keep in mind, they also had AOI MSG in the middle of the UAP task force and AARO. So although this gets really confusing, I think that that's kind of the point with what I'm trying to say here, is that at some point it wasn't clear enough on what Danny was saying. And so what happened thereafter was the rumor mill. And I think a lot of people took that absolutely nothing was happened. Because I listened to those clips a couple of times going, what is it that we're really trying to say here? And I really honestly couldn't figure it out. So what I'm more trying to address is the interpretation that a lot of people were getting out of it, that rumor was there. We know that the UAP task force wouldn't be doing much anymore, as that has morphed into the AOI MSG, which has morphed essentially into AARO. And what I went over in this video was all the stuff in relation to AARO. What I've dealt with before was all the stuff in relation to AOI MSG, which was that one person, which they said in writing was the one person, in the AOI MSG effort. And that's fine. But if that's what Danny's talking about, that's not true anymore, because we have morphed beyond that. And we have a new established group investigating UAP. We now can establish that it is fully staffed. We can now establish that there are hundreds of photos, videos, etc., in relation to what they've been doing. So where Danny was going with his answer, I'm not sure. So if it's just outdated, that's fine. But I'm, still happy that I can clarify. But in the same respect, if he meant something else entirely, I would love to get some kind of clarification. I listened to it a couple times and I couldn't quite follow what he was trying to say. And then I think he went elsewhere with his answer, and then it was not related to what I was trying to figure out anymore. So it was a tough one to follow. So again, I'm not harping on him saying he was absolutely spreading misinformation, but however way you want to slice it or dice it, it was either old, outdated, or inaccurate, like one of the three. And I'm not sure, which one, but I do think that it fits into one of those categories. So hopefully that'll explain a little bit more. Regardless, I was more focused on the interpretation on what people said after the fact, and how they interpreted it and put it on social media and started talking about it. I can try and take a couple more here. I'm going to have to go shortly. Do you think FOIA has ever been used in a counterintelligence op? If I understand your question correctly, if you're saying, is there an op, a counterintelligence op going on, and they strategically put either false or misleading information out there? I mean, am I open to it? Sure. Have I seen evidence of it? No. What I lean towards is, yes, I wouldn't call it a counterintelligence op, but there's definitely strategy to FOIA releases, how they're processed, and even length of time. And a prime example of this would be the official release of the 3 UAP videos. And we know they all leaked. I was going after them through FOIA for quite some time. I'll make it quick. Now that more documents have come out, I had filed for internal documents on why they were releasing these videos. Dean Johnson also got material, which in my view now has solidified that these videos were released because of a FOIA case, which documentation now proves was the one I had filed, which they considered a quote-unquote significant FOIA. Significant FOIAs are essentially ones that can garner a lot of media attention. So they have to strategize. They essentially have to keep everybody in the loop. They have to figure out what they're going to do, because at the end of the day, that particular FOIA request could be a problem, a PR issue. And so they call those significant FOIAs. So these documents came out, proved that my case had essentially cornered them into releasing them through FOIA. In my opinion, this is the strategy in going to what you were asking, in that the release was not done in my FOIA request. The release was done on I think it was a Monday morning. They posted it online, making it look like they were being transparent. But then a couple hours later, the FOIA response that I got, wherein I can trace it back about 1.5 to 2 years over like 3 FOIA cases and case numbers, a couple hours later, they go, oh, well, we released these already. Here you go. Here's a link to it. So there was a lot of strategy in that, in this part's my opinion. There was a lot of strategy where they wanted the impression that they did that willingly. But the reality behind the scenes, when you look at the documents, was the case that I had filed and the argument that I put up for the release of those videos had them in such a corner that they couldn't legally get out of it. They could gamble and deny it and kind of make up an exemption and say, well, sorry, it fits in this exemption. But I could have then filed a judicial case for a judge to come in. And I think they knew that they would lose that because they had already put in writing they were unclassified. They already put in writing a couple other things that I used essentially against them. And they were in a corner and in a pickle. And I did a video on this as well before the release. And I said, I will be shocked if they deny these because there's no possible way that they can get out of this legally. I really honestly believed I had every duck in a row to argue their release. So not a counterintelligence op, but rather strategy of their kind of how they looked to the general public. They were strategizing how best to look. If they released it through FOIA and then I release them right through the Black Vault, and I say, I fought for 1.5 to 2 years. I've had to file 3 different cases. I had to put up all this argument. It was like pulling teeth. All of that is true, by the way. The media would hook onto that and go, look, here are the 3 videos. Although we've seen them before, look at all this trouble that we had to go through to get them as the general public. Or on the other hand, they do it willingly. They make a press release. They do it in the openness aura that they wanted to portray to the public, that they wanted this transparency aura that surrounded them. And they said, we did this on our own. Which one looks better from a PR standpoint? And so that's where the strategy comes in. So stressing that's not a counterintelligence op, but I believe that there's strategy like that goes into a lot of these decisions. And do they play the media? Yes. And I think that is something that I don't have time to get into today, but essentially is what I call the counterintelligence value, specifically how it pertains to the UAP discussion. And so again, would I call that a counterintelligence op? Maybe not an op, but there's still counterintelligence value that they can use for different reasons. And I've gone over that on this channel, and we'll have to do it. We'll have to do it again when I have a little bit more time. All right, let me bang out a couple more here. I see some super chats, so let me go down here because I do want to thank everybody for their support of this. Christopher Thomas, Dr. Taylor interview was great. Thank you for your content. Christopher, thank you for your support. I really do appreciate that. And yes, the interview was awesome. I really enjoyed it. For those who haven't seen it, take I think it's 1 hour and 11 minutes. If you have any interest in UAP, UFOs, the task force, how all that happened, watch that interview. It shed a lot of light, and I follow a lot of these details. It shed a lot of light on things that I was not aware of before, and actually connected some dots that I was fascinated to get, including that NRO document that talked about a UAP advisory panel that had never been out before. I got that through FOIA, and one of Dr. Taylor's answers yesterday kind of put it completely into perspective. So it was a very cool, we'll call it revelation, that connected an already released document to somebody who was on the inside and was able to kind of make sense of that. So I was very happy to get that. M. Bryant, $20 super sticker. Thank you so much for that support. And thank you all for listening and watching. Again, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, please feel free to head over to the YouTube channel if you use YouTube. Subscribing there, you're going to get the most content. www.theblackvault.com/live. That will bounce you to the YouTube channel where I do these live streams. From now on, you probably will see me broadcast them to all social media. But just in case, make sure you're subscribed to that channel because it does help. And not to beat the dead horse, that's where the most chat activity comes in. So if you like that interaction, which I always love to see with these videos and these stories, that's where you're going to get the most action. Christopher Thomas, again, fantastic stuff. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Christopher. Really, really does mean a lot to me, that support. So the last thing I will ask of you guys, if you can, please hit the thumbs up button if you're on YouTube, like or share if you're on Twitter or Facebook or both. It is a huge help. It spreads the word about these videos, these stories. As you can tell through social media posts and these videos, I try and keep you up to date as much as I can. I don't hold on to things. I don't like to tease either. So I was let down that a couple people thought I was trying to tease something last week. That was the story lead. I just didn't have time to sit down and make this video until today. So I wanted to give you guys that lead though, and it kind of morphed in some circles that I was teasing something. So hopefully this video gave you a lot. If you came in late, make sure you watch the first part of it because I do go over the FOIA case and some revelations about AARO, that current UAP investigative effort that's going on right now. And it, is always great to get those little pieces of the puzzle because it starts to allow us to formulate future FOIA requests if you're a FOIA requester, or at least keep updated to what they're doing and be encouraged that those rumors, however they did stem, those rumors that they're doing absolutely nothing are unfounded, that in the reality is they're doing a lot. It's going to be pulling teeth to get it and get those visuals, but they are doing it. They've collected a lot of stuff. So I haven't given up. That number 3 item on the request, trust me, you will hear me talk about that again. So yes, thumbs up, share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you again for all your support, all those super chats, super stickers. I really do appreciate all of that. And thank you for listening and watching. As always, this is John Greenwald Jr. signing off, and we will see you next time.